Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. It's kind of a not great night, so I do appreciate your efforts. Oh, you can't hear me? Oh my gosh, I usually have the loudest voice that I've ever heard, so I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for coming out tonight. It's kind of not a great night out, so I do appreciate your coming out. My name is Deborah McDermott, and I am a reporter with Seacoast Media Group and York Weekly, and this evening is sponsored by SMG, Seacoast Media Group, in cooperation with the York School Department, who has graciously allowed us to use this remarkable new community auditorium for tonight's forum. This event will be in two segments. First, students from York High School, Marshwood High School, and Trape Academy will ask questions of our gubernatorial candidates, and you're in for a treat. They've come up with some excellent questions that are of a concern to them, and I hope of a concern to us all. When that portion of the evening is over, we will be taking questions from the audience. It's my intention to end this evening no later than 8:30. One more matter before we bring out candidates. I'd like to introduce a few of the people in the audience who have made this evening possible. There's no need to applaud. Thanks to, and I hope they're here, York School Superintendent Lou Gazinski. Are you here, Lou? Oh, I thought he was. And Carl Francis. And it's York High Principal. And then I also want to introduce Jeff Barry over here, Steve Crowley as well. Jeff is a York High teacher. Steve is a Trape Academy teacher, both social studies teachers. And they've been very helpful in getting this ready. Then Paul Santerre, who you met, and then I also wanted to point out my two SMG colleagues, Howard Altschuler, who is he's the big boss, he's the executive editor of Seacoast Media Group, and Jen Bryant is somewhere. Jen Bryant is the editor of the York Weekly and the York County Coast-Star, and they've been kind of invaluable in helping me this evening. This forum is being taped by York High School student Will Masterson, and will be put on YouTube so anyone can watch. There will be a link at seacoastonline.com, and I'll ensure that all the high schools represented here tonight get a link as well. So now, without further ado, let's get the show on the road. I will call each candidate for governor in alphabetical order, and please hold your applause until they are all seated. So, Independent, Alan Karen. Oh, if we can, there you go. Independent, Terry Hayes. And Democrat, Janet Mills. It should be noted that Republican Sean Moody was invited to participate tonight, but he declined the invitation. One candidate who will remain nameless for the fourth seat up here. So we've asked each of the candidates to make an opening statement, and we'll begin with you, Mr. Karen.
We are skilled and experienced at this kind of thing. Good evening, everybody. I'm Alan Karen, and I'm running as your third as an independent candidate, and I guess our timekeeper is here. Is that right? We will do our best. I grew up in central Maine, in Waterville, in a family of mill workers and farmers. And those two things, mill workers and farmers, have been the hardest hit part of the Maine economy for the last 50 years. So when we talk about two Maines, that's what we're talking about, the folks who have been left behind in Maine and who I have spent most of my life trying to help in one way or another. I'm a 9th grade dropout who has a master's degree from the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, and the only and first student ever admitted without doing anything in between. Can you hear me too far, too close? I'll be the guinea pig on the microphone. We'll figure it out. You're good. I think that Maine is at a critical moment. We have wasted 7 or 8 years of opportunity. The world is changing faster now than at any time in human history. And we must either quickly adapt or we will continue to decline. If Sean Moody were here, he'd tell you the economy is booming, but it's not booming for everybody. And many people are still being left behind, and we're struggling with hopelessness, with despair, and with anger expressing itself in our politics. So I have, for the last 20 years, been focused on how to build a new and sustainable prosperity in Maine. I've co-authored 2 books on how to do this, and for 5 years wrote weekly columns in the Sunday Telegram and 2 other papers. I want this to be a campaign of ideas, not attack ads, and that's what I'm trying to introduce into this campaign.
Thank you, Alan. And thank you, Deb and Paul and the others who have organized this event this evening. And thank you, young people, for coming to put us through our paces. I'm looking forward to your questions. My name is Terry Hayes, and I want to be your next governor. Well, I figure if I don't tell you, I can't count on you remembering. I'm an independent, clean elections candidate for governor. I hail from Oxford County. And I think what Maine needs next is an independent, collaborative, and experienced leader who will avoid the gridlock that partisanship has created in Augusta. I think it's time that we step out of that. I don't work for either team or either party. I work on behalf of all of Maine. As your first independent state treasurer, I was elected by the legislature. Those are the partisans. They elected me first in 2014 and they re-elected me in 2016. I offer that to you as evidence that I can work with everyone. I respect everybody who's brave enough to do this public policy work. I don't necessarily agree with them, but I refuse to make my neighbor my enemy because of who signs on their lawn. At the end of the day, the challenges we're confronted with are not partisan, and neither are the solutions. So I hope to earn your trust this evening, and then when I become your governor, my goal is to raise the trust across the state in our state government. I get up every day and go to work with the intent of keeping your public funds safe and making sure that we invest them in ways that return dividends back to you. It is a distinct privilege to be here this evening, and particularly because our questioners are our youth. Workforce, broadband, and healthcare are the 3 policy priorities that I hope we get to talk about this evening, because they're the 3 things that I think are the most important in our immediate future. Again, I'm Terry Hayes. I want to earn your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Can you just, if you don't mind, I think I'll stand just to stretch a little bit. I'm feeling a little energized tonight. I appreciate your having us here, and I welcome the opportunity to answer questions from all comers. I've been doing this for quite a while. I'm the Democratic nominee, the Democratic candidate for governor. I also come from a Republican family. You want to see bipartisanship? Come to my Thanksgiving dinners. Well, listen, I can stand here and talk to you about my background, how I delivered newspapers as a kid in Western Maine, how I won 8 elections in the 2nd Congressional District, how I served corned beef hash and macaroni and cheese as a teenager at the local diner, how I ran for district attorney, how I was the first woman district attorney in the New England states, how I ran for attorney general and the first woman attorney general in the state of Maine. and everything I've done in that area for natural resources, for protection of our rights, etc., I could tell you that. I could stand here for quite a while and talk to you about that, but that's not what I want to do. Because right now I'm feeling like the character in that movie who said, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." I watched the hearings last week, and I listened to them on the radio, and I really am mad. And I'm feeling like the stakes are as high as they ever have been in this election here in Maine. Right here and right now, we've got a chance to defeat a Tea Party Republican. We have a chance to elect a governor of Maine who will protect our rights. Because whatever happens to Judge Kavanaugh, as awful as those hearings were last week, the Supreme Court is not going in the right direction. It's not going to be there for us to protect our rights. It's not going to be there to protect gender equality, to protect our health care rights or civil rights, to protect collective bargaining, to protect our very right to vote in this country. The Supreme Court's not going to be there, but I will be there. If you elect me your next governor, I will stand for the people of Maine as I have stood for the people of Maine during my years as Attorney General, years as a legislator, in private practice, and as a citizen of this state the past many decades. I'll stand up for you. Thank you.
And now we will begin with our first questioner. And what I'm going to do, I don't think I talked to you guys about this, but I'm going to try and do it so it starts with a different person each time, so we're not in the same order. So the first question will come from you. Please state your name and school and, oh, you want, there you go.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Clifford. I am a senior at Tripp Academy in Kittery, and my question tonight is, the Land for Maine's Future program has been stalled in recent years due to a lack of funds, and has had an unstable partnership with the Federal Forest Legacy Program. Locally, the Kittery Land Trust, the York Land Trust, and the Great Wars Regional Land Trust have all benefited from the Land for Maine's Future. Land for Maine's Future funds were crucial in the purchase of the Brave Boat headwaters in Kittery Point, a parcel of land only a short walk away from many Kittery Point residents. It provides a critical link to 14,000 acres of conserved land in the greater Mount Economicus region. So with this in mind, my question for you is, do you have plans to bolster the relationship between state and federal environmental programs? And do you imagine that relationship will strengthen conservation efforts in our state?
Alan?
I have been very active in the environmental movement for decades and have been a supporter of LMF before we had LMF. It has done extraordinary work across the state, as you point out, as have many thousands of individuals who have contributed through the years. I have long believed that we need to build a certain kind of prosperity in Maine that doesn't cost us our character. I've often used the expression, we need to figure out how to grow without wrecking the place. That is the essential question for everyone in Maine and has been for a long time. So I applaud all the folks who've worked on LMF. I think it's extremely important to us and to the future. I will support expanded bond issues for LMF, and I'm rather horrified at how the current governor has blocked funding, imposing his own will over the will of the voters, and not only on this issue, but on many others. So it's time we remember who we are and who we were for the last 7 or 8 years. People who work together, people who have a sense of hopefulness about the future, and people who do the work that has to be done together, not separately.
I didn't catch your first name.
Jennifer?
Thank you. Appreciate you repeating that. It's especially important right now for there to be collaboration between state level and national level environmental interests, because we're confronted with climate change and there's going to be a significant impact in our state because of our coastline and the assets that exist within just the tidal waters. We're going to need some help planning for the impacts, because despite the fact that we know it's coming, our capacity to prevent it at this point is really limited. It doesn't mean we shouldn't try, because there is a broader impact, but despite our best efforts, we're going to be confronted with a significant change to our coastline, and likely some significant changes to water resources inland as well. So the best way to prepare is to collaborate between state level organizations and federal organizations. And I have always supported the Lands for Maine's Future program, not simply with money, but also we need to recognize that the other way you can stall public policy is not appointing people to boards. And we've had that means of stopping progress for that program. And as your next governor, I'll make sure the boards are filled, that the work gets done, and when the voters approve an LMF bond, we'll put that money to work for conservation and climate change preparation. Thank you again for the question.
Thank you, Jennifer. Listen, I think we all agree on the board for the Land for Maine's future and the prospects for the future. Listen, but I would disagree with Terry in suggesting that there's a great deal of collaboration to be had with the federal government right now. I believe in climate change. I believe the science. I know that it's caused by human activity. There's no quarrel on us about that issue. But I'm doing battle with the federal government right now over things like the vehicle emissions law, the CAFE standards, the mercury and airborne toxics laws, rules, the EPA's budget, the methane leaks rules, which is a powerful greenhouse gas, the energy efficiency standards, the Clean Power Plan. I'm defending that in court right now, the Obama Clean Power Plan. So we don't agree that the federal government's going to be a real helpmate here. But I supported the Land for Maine's Future in the Appropriations Committee for 4 years. I supported it in the legislature and voted for it over and over again. It's one of the more popular bonds that you ever see on the ballot. I'm appalled that the current administration has forced it back, has prevented people from even attending meetings, board meetings, to allocate the funds as the legislature said it should allocate them. That the Forest Legacy Program, this federal funding that this administration has rejected for the Forest Legacy Program, that's among the nearly $2 billion of federal funds that the current administration has rejected. I'm concerned that Mr. Moody, who's not here, will follow in Mr. LePage's footsteps. I believe that the Blaine House should never be home to a climate denier. And if I become governor, I will take every action to protect our climate, as I have as an Attorney General and as a legislator. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Noah Fox. I'm a senior at York High School. And since 2014, there have been 240 school shootings, resulting in the death of 140 students and staff. One of the deadliest shootings happened this February in Parkland, Florida, where an ex-student murdered 17 students and staff, as well as harming multiple others. After the tragic incident, the students of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School started a movement that led to a national walkout protest to call for stronger gun control. Many of the ideas to fix this problem are arming teachers, fortifying school defenses, increasing the number of armed guards in schools, and ensuring comprehensive criminal background checks for all legal gun purchases. Do you agree with these solutions? And if so, which do you feel can be the most effective at addressing the problem and preventing further incidences? What policies would you advance or promote to help address the troubling problem in our schools and to ensure Maine school children are safe from such threats?
Terry, we'll begin with you. Sorry.
Thank you, just a reference, the earlier question was around environmental organizations at the state and national level, not the government. I just wanted to make that clear. I'm sorry, I want to get to your question as well. What I think we have to understand is that the entire time I was in public school, I had nothing to look, no experience like the ones that you folks have seen that have been all over the news. So there's a real learning curve here for those of us who didn't grow up with that threat. And the specific answer to your question, I do not believe that arming teachers is a solution. That is not one that I would support. Given limited resources for public education, I don't want to buy guns with them. Okay, that's the first thing. I also don't want our public schools to look like prisons. We need to find a way to keep our children safe and honor the Second Amendment at the same time. And I'm convinced we can do that, but we're going to need your help to make that happen. The background check piece that you mentioned, I support. If we're transferring firearms from a family member, I guess I wouldn't see that as necessary, but every other opportunity to acquire one, having that screening done, to me makes sense. But I think the other thing we have a chance to do is not to grow shooters. You know, humans operate those weapons. What are we doing that causes our young people, not all of them by any means, but enough to scare us to this extent, to think that that's the solution, to come into school and shoot their peers and their teachers? What are we doing that are leaving children behind? The vast majority of these shooters are, in fact, children are very young, they're 18 or less. So all of us play a role in creating connectivity and helping encourage relationships so that no one feels the need to do that, because there's something wrong with the system as we grow them. I think that's part of our challenge as well, but thank you for the question.
Thank you. And thank you again for the question. It's a complicated one. I don't think there's any one single issue pertaining to guns that doesn't invoke a lot of line drawing, line in the sand drawing, and partisanship and high passions on all sides. And that's a shame. I agree with Terry that we've got to bring people together and collaborate on issues related to school safety and violence, and firearms violence in particular. Look, I'm not only a prosecutor, former prosecutor, and former defense attorney, someone who's dealt with guns on a very personal level, someone who's had a gun held to her head, a loaded gun, in an act of domestic violence. This issue is personal to me. And it's personal to me because I have 3 grandchildren in the public school systems in the high schools of Maine, in 2 different high schools. And if anything should happen to them, I don't know what I would do. It would break my heart. And I want to protect their safety as much as I want to protect yours. That is why I supported and testified for and helped draft a red flag bill in the legislature this spring in April, along with one of my primary opponents, Senator Dion. I got a bill passed this year that would allow judges to take guns away, all guns, away from people who are determined to be dangerous based on sworn testimony, and allow them to at least temporarily confiscate their guns or take their guns away. That bill got bipartisan support in the Judiciary Committee. That bill was supported by the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine. And it got unanimous support, went through the House, the Senate, the House, the Senate, and then this current governor vetoed it. And the Senate overrode the veto, the Republicans in the House failed to override the veto. That's where I would work on gun issues, right, first and foremost, is the red flag kind of bill. Identifying the truly dangerous people, not based on hearsay or gossip, but based on sworn testimony, and making sure they don't have weapons that will allow them to commit violent crimes. Otherwise, I take basically the same positions as Senator King.
I happen to think the idea of fortifying schools and arming teachers is quite possibly the most dangerous idea that I've heard in the last 5 years. It's just a dumb idea, to be blunt about it. Look, we have a huge problem with the proliferation of military-style weapons in this country that have been made legal by a very powerful national lobby, the NRA. There has always been a question that we confronted in America about guns, and where we draw the line between legitimate civilian possession of guns and the military use of guns. We've always had that question. That's why we have a Second Amendment. I agree and will support basic Second Amendment rights for hunters, target shooters, and people who want to protect their homes.
Senator people.
And I think most people do.
Candidates.
But the position that's been advanced by the NRA and other advocates nationally has really become extreme. And it's become the center of the conversation rather than what it should be. So this country 100 years ago recognized, for instance, that citizens should not have machine guns. We had a national consensus. I'm sorry I went over my time. I was looking this way.
Hello, my name is Rachel and I'm currently a senior at Marshwood High School. This past summer, I attended Girls Save, where one of the big issues we talked about was gun safety. In the last year, school safety, especially in relation to school shootings, has been a growing concern. Last year, following the Parkland shooting, students from several schools, including Marshwood, where I attend, walked out to raise awareness about school safety issues. My question is this: as governor, what steps would you take to improve gun safety in not only schools, but in all public buildings in the state of Maine?
I really couldn't hear your question.
I'm sorry. My question is, as governor, what steps would you take to improve gun safety in not only schools, but in all public buildings in the state of Maine?
I think if you could take the microphone back from you.
Yeah, I think I got your question. Physical measures to protect the schools are being done now. Can you hear me now? Okay, all right. Physical measures are being done now by a collaborative effort. The legislature authorized the School Safety Commission, if you will, to look at bulletproof glass and other measures, and they appropriate some money to enhance security at public schools. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking about, but school safety, I agree with Terry and Alan. I think we all agree. Arming teachers is not the answer. And I think we disagree with Mr. Moody that fire extinguishers are not going to put a shooter down. That is not the answer to protecting against school safety issues. So I think physical plant improvement is appropriate and needed. At the same time, I don't think any of us want to turn our schools into prisons or prison-like facilities. So we get to achieve a fine balance. But I want to protect people in school and out of school, on the streets too, and in their homes. And that's why I've been part of an effort to protect victims of domestic violence against firearm uses. When I was in the legislature, we got together and worked on a bill to allow a different one than the red flag bill, but a bill that allows judges now to take guns away from individuals facing temporary protection from abuse orders. We got a unanimous report on that. We went to the gun advocates and said, what can we do to make this better? How can we get you on board with this? And we put in due process protections for people, we put in safety measures, and now that bill alone, which has been in effect for more than a dozen years, has saved hundreds and hundreds of lives in the state of Maine. And I was proud to work in a collaboration with Republicans and Democrats, gun safety people, gun advocates, and sportsmen to get that bill accomplished.
Well, I suppose in some sense I may have answered part of that question. The problem with going down this road of fortifying public spaces is that it never ends. So we can make schools safer, then we'll have to make buses safer, then we'll have to make libraries safer, on and on. this will go on, because people will go to the most vulnerable places, as they have done many times, including people running in marathons. So there has to be a deeper strategy that helps us understand what's going on in this country. The level of polarization and anger is astonishing in this country, and it's worse than it's been since just before the Civil War. This is a much deeper problem than, although securing schools is a serious matter, and we have to do everything we can. I don't want you to misunderstand it. But we have to go deeper. We have to understand why the discourse in this country has become so polarized. The level of partisanship in the federal government and in the state government is unprecedented. We can't get anything done. Common sense cannot survive in this toxic environment we're in. So the deepest question is, how are we going to break out of this? I saw some fascinating polling last week on partisanship. And it turns out that members of each party believe that it's all the fault of the other party. This is true in both parties, in very high numbers, and they're both right. So this is the most fundamental issue we have to address, I think. Did I run out of time again? Let's just get started.
Rachel, I have a question back at you. Because your question included not just schools, but other public facilities. So I'm a little curious about what would make you feel safer. What kinds of things that you think would help, because I'm somewhat at a loss. I work in an environment where if you go into the State House, you have to, if you have a belt on, gentlemen, you have to take it off, okay? But if you come into the Cross Building, which is right down the stairs, there's no security whatsoever. So electeds work in both environments. The public has access to both environments. And it kind of gets a little bit at where Alan was headed, is we're not sure what it looks like or what's enough. So I'm curious to know, what would make you feel safer in a public place in particular?
I think that making us feel safer in schools would be very similar to making us feel safe in public places, but I'm not sure exactly what steps to do to make us feel safer as a society.
Well, at this point, I guess, because I'm trying to figure out, it's more of a feeling than what would generate that. And having open conversations, being able to understand what the gun laws are, how they apply and to whom they apply, may be part of this. It may just be an information lag. But at the same time, I'm going to go back to what I said previously. Let's not raise people to think that's the solution to a problem. Let's not, push people out, marginalize them to the extent that they believe that that's the solution that's going to help make things better. I think that's really key, because people operate these guns. Thank you.
Hello, my name is William Heffron. I go to Trenton Academy. I'm currently a junior. I live in Kittery Point, Maine. All right. It has been a trend as long as I have been alive that faith in the government goes down every year. There are going to be thousands of people turning 18 this year, and therefore becoming a part of your constituency. And simply put, the expectation of these people, Maine's youth, and in fact America's youth, is that they will not be represented effectively and fairly on both the state and federal level. My question to you, as candidates for the highest public office in our state, why? Why is voter apathy so prevalent, and what policies do you plan to enact to fix that?
Am I going first on this one? Look, we've got two huge problems with discourse in America. I just mentioned one of them, which is the tone of the conversation. But let me get to two other specifics. One is politics is awash in special interest money, every cycle. And the numbers continue to grow beyond what was in our imagination even 10 years ago. We are awash in money, and the money is only doing one thing, which is attacking the other party. Turn on your television tonight and sit back for the show. There will be $8 or $10 million spent in the next 5 weeks from the two national party organizations primarily, and their affiliates, viciously attacking the candidate from the other party. We have been witnessing this phenomenon for, anybody want to guess, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. But it's totally different now than it ever was before because of the volumes of money. And guess what happens? If you raise a generation of Americans on that diet, year after year after year, election after election, in which they are told that politicians are corrupt, they're out for themselves, they're trying to destroy the country, they're evil. If you grow up on that diet, you will not be healthy. And America is not healthy right now because we've grown up on that diet. We have to break that cycle. I know that, I believe Terry and I have both pledged we would never run a negative ad, and we won't. But that is a cancer in America right now. And that's also contributed to the lack of civility. You cannot claim that you're going to unite people once you're elected if you've been beating them with a bat for 6 weeks in a campaign. It does not happen.
I love the question. At the end of the day, on November 6th or November 7th, when the votes are counted, we're going to have the government we deserve. Because we will choose it. That's the way the system works, okay? The challenge, I think, is that those of us that are doing government, we've lost the trust of the people that are paying the bills. Because we haven't necessarily been doing our jobs in a way that engenders that trust. I get up every day and go to work with the clear intention of keeping your money safe and making sure that in the conduct of my office as your state treasurer, I don't do anything that embarrasses you. And that sounds like a little, maybe a low bar, but it's important to me. And I guess I need you to understand that the lack of trust, I take that on. I actually have a fantasy. I'm going to share it with all of you, but don't tell, okay? I want to live in a world with enthusiastic taxpayers. Right. Okay? That's the world I want to live in. I want to be responsible for deploying your resources in a way that generates the needs that you have, meets those needs, and generates trust from you and from young people. That's my goal. So I'm going to get up every day and go to work as your governor with the same aim, and I'm going to encourage all of the state employees whose salaries you pay to make that same commitment. What can I do today that makes Maine a better place? When we behave in a way that's true to those values, we'll earn your trust back. And in the meantime, if you would vote, if you are able, you're going to help own that outcome. And I encourage you to do that. We're dues-paying members in this society. Step up and make your pick. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Look, the town of York is one of 20 towns in Maine that are the most vulnerable to sea rise, ocean rising. The EPA estimates that the sea will rise 2 to 3 feet. The sea level will rise 2 to 3 feet in the next several generations. I can't believe that youth of Maine don't care about that. I refuse to believe that young people in Maine don't care about natural resources. I refuse to believe that young people and others in Maine don't care about gender equity, about civil rights, about voting rights, about health care, about the jobs of the future, about education, the quality of our education across the state of Maine. If you believe in those things, if you want to help promote those things, then vote on November 6th, and I hope you vote for me. But I have a record of protecting those things. I have a record of fighting for the people, fighting for our natural resources, our clean air, clean water, and for civil rights, and gender equity, and voting rights, and women's rights, the right to choose, to have access to safe and legal abortion. All the rights that are so much in play right now. The stakes of this election are higher than they've ever been before. And I want to be the governor that protects those rights and that protects young people at their most vulnerable time, and that fully funds education, K through 12, college through cradle through college, to make sure that universal pre-K happens, that full enrollment in Head Start happens, that our kids grow up with equal opportunity around the state. Don't let young people stay home. Don't let them not vote in this election. It is the most critical of my age and yours.
Who's passed this one?
Let me see. Hayes. Ms. Hayes.
Hello, my name is Kayla Dredge, and I'm a senior here at York High School. Is that better? Okay. My name is Kayla Dredge. I am a senior at York High School, and being a member of a group called Tidal Waves, I have witnessed firsthand what the effects of substance abuse can cause. Tidal Waves is a group of students here at York High who work to help others and talk to people about the effects of substance abuse and how it could affect them in the future. Across the nation, we are witnessing an opioid epidemic, and we may continue watching it grow if no action is taken. In 2017, there is an estimated 72,000 deaths across the nation, and Maine alone endured 418 due to overdoses. What are your plans, if elected as governor, to attack this epidemic head-on, safeguard funding for prevention, help those struggling with addiction, and lower the overall number of overdoses in the state of Maine?
Kayla, thank you for the question. The opioid epidemic, has touched all of us, if not directly, indirectly. I think the biggest reason, there are two reasons why we haven't made any significant progress on it yet. One is stigma and judgment. We have people who actually believe that if your brain disease is substance abuse, that you're not worthy of treatment or of investment. I don't believe that at all. But that's a challenge that we fight currently. And our language and how we address this issue just in our conversation is impacted in that way. And the second reason we haven't made significant progress is partisanship. We've known from the get-go that we're going to need to address access, education, treatment, and law enforcement. We've known that. But instead of making significant progress, we fight about whether it's treatment or law enforcement. We haven't put significant resources into this public health epidemic yet, not from the state of Maine. We're going to have to invest some of our money to fix it, and we're going to need to make sure that when someone is ready for help, that we don't put them on a wait list. We have to have a treatment safety net across the state so that when someone is ready to reach out, there's someone there to help them, because we can't waste any Mainers, none of them. And so recognizing that the partisanship gets in the way, consider voting for someone who's not going to be dragged down by that, but can be focused on the goal and recognize that substance abuse is not a partisan problem, and the solution shouldn't be partisan either.
Thank you for the question. It's an important one, and it's one very personal to me, too. I deal with this issue every day in my office. We just released statistics last week about the first half of this year. We lost 180 souls, 180 people to drug overdose in Maine the first half of this year alone. Now, a few weeks ago, there was some seals that washed up on the shores of Cape Elizabeth and Scarborough and died. And it made headline news above the fold, first page, page 1 news, and people were so upset. And I'm thinking, we lost 180 people the first half of this year. People, human lives, to drug overdose. Why aren't we equally upset about that? It upsets me. I'm the only candidate who has a 10-point plan. If you check on my website, check my website. I've been working on this for more than a year. And I have a detailed plan of addressing the opioid epidemic on day 1, which starts with expanding Medicaid for Maine people. So that those people who need it, that is been partisan, unfortunately. But it's a little known fact that I actually supported a major bill of Paul LePage's, Governor LePage's, 3 years ago. A bill that I testified for that caps prescriptions of opioids, a very important first step. Caps the duration and the milligram prescriptions of opioids in this state. It's an amazing bill, and I testified for it, and I supported it, and I applaud the governor for putting that in and getting it passed. At the same time, he vetoed the bills that would allow Narcan, the life-saving drug, to be dispensed over the counter. And I said, what can I do? I bought a room full of Narcan with pharmaceutical settlement monies, and I've given it out all across the state to 85 police departments. With that Narcan alone, as of 2 days ago, we've saved 535 lives. Because I'm about getting the job done. That's what I'll do as governor of Maine.
This is a deeply personal issue for me. I told you at the outset that I came from a distressed community and I grew up in poverty. And this is a rampant problem where I come from, as are many other symptoms of a deeper problem we have in the state, which is the absence of hope. I want to just let that settle for a moment. When people do not have hope, when they cannot form a picture in their heads of a brighter future, when they do not have opportunity, they can turn quickly to destructive behavior. So we all, I think, generally agree on what needs to be done on a program level, but on a deeper level, we must build more opportunity for Maine people. Not here on the coast, not in Greater Portland, not up the mid-coast, but in the rest of the state. Or we're going to continue to have this problem. Now, there's some other things that need to happen. One is the federal government needs to stop doing its job. The federal government has contributed to the flood of opioids around this country because they allowed themselves to become essentially wholly owned by Big Pharma because of campaign contributions. So there is a larger problem. It's hard for us to solve these problems at the state level when the federal government is not doing its job. So it's worth noting on this, by the way, that the federal government just passed a big bill that's going to help with the opioid struggle. And the vote in the Senate on that bill was 99-1. 99-1. The U.S. Senate cannot agree on the time of day on a vote of 99-1, but they did it. Why did we spend 2 years in gridlock in Maine while people were dying? Why couldn't we find our way to common sense? We can blame it all on the governor, and I'm happy to do that, but the blame goes around.
Hello, my name is Jacob Doyle, and I'm a senior at Marshwood High School, and my question is, if you are elected governor, what plans or policies will you implement to keep graduating high school and college students from leaving Maine to pursue other opportunities, especially students from York County?
Especially from what?
York County.
Oh, well, I suspect students from York County are similar to students all across the state. My grandsons are of that age, and they tell me that they kind of want to leave the state. And I say, do that. Explore the world. I did that. And I hope you do. But I hope you have the opportunity to come back and feel welcome to come back. I hope you have, and I want to make sure you have the same opportunities here that you might have in another state. And that means high-tech jobs, it means renewable energy jobs, it means the jobs of the future and the jobs of the present, and it means having an ability to live within your means and make a good living here at home. It means having good internet capacity, broadband across the state of Maine. I was driving my grandsons around a couple of weeks ago, and they were on the phone in the back seat. One of them dropped a call, and he said, "Grammy, this is why we're leaving the state." I said, "Why? You dropped one call with your girlfriend, and you're going to abandon us? Stick with me, kid. You know? We're going to fix this. The internet problem, the broadband problem, the economy problem in Rim counties especially. I've got a plan to do that. I've got a detailed economic action plan on my website, publicized it a couple of weeks ago. I hope you'll look at it. It includes some incentives to come back to Maine. If you choose, if you're working for a big national company of some sort, you have an opportunity to come back to Maine. We'll help pay your expenses, tax deductions, allow you to work remotely from this state, give you co-working spaces in different hubs and districts around the state, including York County, and allow you to share overhead, to continue to be here, to keep your ties here, because we need you. We want you to come back here. We need the workforce, we need you, because you're our family.
I've been working for many years on how to grow a new economy in Maine. That is different than a stronger economy or a better economy, all the things we hear. It's a new economy, built from the bottom up, where there's opportunity for everyone to create new businesses in Maine. We need to make that as easy as possible. We need to start preparing young people to do that in elementary school. I, 2 years ago, co-authored this book called Maine's Next Economy. It's on Amazon. I don't make any money from it. It goes to nonprofits. I invite you to take a look at it. I didn't start thinking about this stuff when I decided to run for office. I'm running for office to get it done. And there's great opportunity for me right now to use the ingenuity we have, the resourcefulness, the hard work, the dedication to quality that we're already famous for, and expand it exponentially. We can do that. One of the things we have to do is stop chasing the past. We have had decades of political leadership telling us they're going to bring the past back. It's our equivalent of bringing the coal mines back. They told us they're going to bring the mills back, where I come from. They've been doing this for decades. It's nonsense. We're not going to do that. Oh, if we're not going backwards, we're going sideways from one party to the other. We need to move forward. We can do it, and we have to do it. Otherwise, we're going to continue to lose young people, and young people are not going to come here. So this is extremely important. If we don't do this now, if we lose another 6 or 8 years of going sideways, it's going to be very hard for us to recover. And I have an idea on how to fund education, higher education for people I'd love to talk about in a future question.
Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate the question. You know, what makes it difficult for us as your parents and grandparents is that we look at you and we see the investment we've made so far in your education, and if you stay here in Maine and go on to higher ed, you're our most precious asset. It doesn't mean you shouldn't leave to find opportunities in other places, but know that the welcome mat's always out. And we need to talk about your opportunities in Maine differently. There are thousands of jobs open today across the state of Maine. These are not all entry-level minimum wage positions. 72 jobs open at Jackson Labs between Ellsworth and Mount Desert Island. Everything from groundskeeper to research scientist, and some titles in between that I didn't know what they meant. You might, but I didn't. I was looking at Chimbro in the construction industry. There were over 50 open positions, all but 5 of which were in Maine. These are skilled positions, not necessarily, this might be a community college career for someone. We have told our children for too long that they can get a decent education here, but they really can't have a career. And that's just not true. You can have a career in Maine. So we need to connect you with those opportunities earlier. Some of that is through shadowing or internships. And when I say internships, I mean you get paid to do it, because you're adding value when you show up. And that's the opportunities are. And making sure that you know how much we appreciate your willingness to stay. And we'll find other things. Janet's right, we need broadband. We need connectivity. We'll do all of that, and we'll make you want to be here.
So let's give a round of applause to these young adults. I have long felt that the future is in good hands, and these students have reinforced my belief in the rising gem. I said I have long, sorry, boy. I have long felt our future is in good hands, and these students have reinforced my belief in the rising generation. So now we turn to questions from the audience. Your question must be addressed to all three candidates, and they must be asked in a respectful and cordial tone, and please be as brief as possible. Time is a frittering, as they say. Those who want to ask questions are asked to proceed to the back of this aisle right now, and we will have the mics there momentarily. And you will be able to ask your question of the candidates. There'll be one at each. You should know that we are under constraints. I don't know how many people have burning questions to ask, but we are under time constraints this evening. So I just want to let you know that I'm sorry if we don't get to your particular question, but it doesn't look like we have a full ton of people right now interested in talking with us. So we'll see. We'll see where we go. So, shall we start? Are you ready, Paul?
If you go to your right first.
Okay, go to our right first. Sure. Whoever's there first, come on down. Ask your question.
1, 2.
Sir, maybe you can get... Okay, go ahead. Yep.
Can you hear me? I'm afraid I'm a Brit, and I've got some figures for you. In the UK, 1,710 people were killed on the roads. We have a population of 66 million. In Maine, a population of 1.3 million, 171 people were killed on the roads. Do the maths. The driving is terrible. People use cell phones on the roads. What will you as governor do to bring the death toll on the roads down?
Did you hear that question?
We're going to need we're not able to hear the
We're
question.
going to need an up.
The acoustics are a little tough here. We get a lot of echo. By the way, it's really good to see you all. Driving deaths. Well, we might do more to enforce distracted driving laws in this state. This is a new phenomenon. None of us are ready for it. I don't think the laws have caught up with it. And if you don't know what distracted driving is, don't look it up on your phone on the way home. Was that the question? How? And drugs?
Yes, very, very simple. In the UK, if you're caught driving using a handheld mobile twice, you're off the road for a year.
Yeah.
Paul, you can't hear that microphone.
On that one, can they just step closer?
It's really an echo problem more than anything else.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I sound like a rock star. Right, in the UK, if you use a handheld mobile twice, you're off the road for a year. No ifs, no buts. If you're caught texting, you're off the road straight away.
Texting. Yeah, should be off the road, should be out of cars. I hate to say it because I like to make phone calls when I'm traveling. We all do, but we're going to have to figure this one out. By the way, we've got another problem we're going to have to figure out. It's just coming up. We are in the process of legalizing marijuana. And Janet will know more about this than I will, but I was trying to keep that quiet. I didn't want to go negative. No. because you're in law enforcement, you know, the whole thing. But look, we're going to have a serious problem here because we can't regulate driving under the influence of marijuana in the same ways we do with alcohol. They don't test in the same ways. So get ready for this problem. We now have two problems. We have distracted driving with cell phones, and we're going to soon have people driving under heavy influence of marijuana. And you'll note them, they all weave in similar ways. And you have to get out of the way.
My plan is to enforce the laws that we have around this problem. I have to share with you, though, I had the privilege of attending a tech talk, sponsored by WEX in Portland last week. And the gentleman who spoke to us talked all about autonomous vehicles and how close they are in our future. And when we have them, the prediction is that the deaths due to car accidents will be eliminated. So the machines will do better than the humans. That's the prediction, not mine, but the gentleman who came from Ford and spoke about it to this large group of folks in Portland last week. I felt it was a significant improvement. I'm not sure we'll get to zero, but I also believe that they're closer in our future than we may think right now. In the meantime, we need to enforce the laws that we have. We have a good distracted driving law. If somebody makes a mistake, you catch them, you nail them. I don't think you want them not driving because I don't want to support them. I want them to be able to go to work and earn a living. And in Maine, for most people, you lose your driver's license, you lose your opportunity to earn a living. I don't want to support them too, but I want them to learn a lesson. I don't want them to kill anybody. Let's enforce the laws that we have so that we can all be safe.
Thanks for the question. On traffic safety, when I was the district attorney for Andrews, Goddard, Franklin, and Oxford counties, I worked with the then governor and the legislature to enact the very first OUI per se law. We enacted a law that at that time made it a .10 automatic, basically conviction, and then it went down to .08. I worked a long time on that bill. In more recent years, we worked together to enact a bill that does prohibit distracted driving, and also because of Senator Diamond's effort and the efforts of some of the legislators in this room, Lydia Bloom, I think Patty Hymanson, who's not here but is active on this issue. The legislature enacted a law that does prohibit texting and emailing while driving. Now that's a fairly new law. We still need to do more massive public education effort, including in the schools and in the driver ed programs. I think we can do that and prevent those kinds of tragedies from happening. I think we need more road safety education. I think our Secretary of State, Mr. Dunlap, is very aware of that. He's doing a good job getting the word out about our new laws and about the dangers of texting and driving and distracted driving in general. It's an issue, I think more particularly with younger people who are so used to clinging to their cell phone, to messaging people every 30 seconds, and it's a tough habit to give up when you're driving. And you should be required to pull over, get out of the car, and text as necessary, if that's what you have to do. We also need better roads. That's a whole other issue. But I've been to many, as a district attorney, I've been to many tragic accidents and death scenes, seen the results of people who were distracted just for a few minutes, or people who blew through a stop sign, just not thinking, not seeing, not looking. I know the tragedies that exist in the state of Maine when it comes to driver safety, or lack of safety. Thank you for the question.
Okay, you want to go next?
First, I would just like to thank you, Janet Mills.
Closer to the mic.
Is that better?
Yeah,
okay.
You're good.
First, I would just like to thank you, Janet Mills, for your red flag bill. I think it's a unique bill, and it's incredibly important, and I appreciate your work on that. So, Terry Hayes, when we were talking about gun control, you had mentioned, what is happening to our kids and our youth while growing up that makes them feel like this is the only answer that they have is to shoot and to hurt people. So one of my questions is, how do you feel about more access to mental health in high schools or even in middle schools and even starting in grade schools? What are some things that we can can do to provide mental health access for children starting at a very young age when they need it. I think that's something that would really help this, to go a long way. If that's not your idea, I'd like to know what your other ideas are to support these kids that need it before they feel like they get to that point.
Tell me your first name again.
Andrea.
Thank you, Andrea. Andrea, mental health issues are particularly personal for me. When I was a child, my mother ended up as an inpatient at the Augusta Mental Health Institute. She spent 7 or 8 years there. I can't remember which. It was a dreadful time for me. Subsequent to that, so I experienced firsthand, my mother was part of the consent decree when we emptied out AmHigh, but we didn't have any kind of community supports. So my sisters and I, who were in high school, took care of my mother in between her subsequent hospital stays. In addition to that, I spent 28 years as a guardian ad litem in Maine's district and probate courts, working in custody litigation, oftentimes with child abuse and neglect victims, as well as divorce and post-divorce. I've seen people at their worst. We have to approach mental health better than we're doing physical health right now, frankly. We have to look at it from a health perspective. Prevention is the best money we can spend. And that's everything from the school environment to the pediatric care and making sure folks have access. Because we can prevent this. It's another place where there's significant stigma. You're depressed. It's hard enough to tell somebody when you're depressed, but when you do, shame comes with that. We have got to stop that. Our mental health oftentimes predicts our physical health, and it's precisely what creates these circumstances where young people kill others. So I'm married to an LCSW, my daughter is an LCPC, I live this, and I'm all about increasing access for folks across Maine from childhood all the way through our adulthood. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for the question. Mental health is an awfully serious issue, and I too have a close family member who has had severe mental health issues throughout his entire life, and I witnessed what he's gone through, including institutionalization. The same hospital where Terry's mother was hospitalized, and it's very frustrating. And I wish that he had been diagnosed a lot earlier, that there had been mental health facilities and treatment in the schools at an early age. I think the first thing we do is expand Medicaid so that more robust health services can be provided to people. People will be insured, old and young people, people without the income to afford insurance on their own. This is critical. School-based health clinics, I'm a big supporter of and would like to fund fully. My office is very much involved in implementing the consent decree that Terry mentioned. The backlog there is in community services for people of all ages. And that doesn't apply simply to people who have been institutionalized, but other people who have mental illnesses under the ADA, they merit the same kinds of services. So the court decrees, and Justice Wathen, are trying to find a way to fully fund community services and services at Riverview. The current administration has gone a long ways towards doing that, but we still have a backlog. Part of it's from forensic individuals taking up the bed spaces, but we need more community services. And certainly, as you bring up, services in the schools. We talk about adverse childhood experiences that might lead to substance use disorder. That's something we can identify and address at the early ages, including preschool, universal pre-K, which I support, and fully funding and implementing Head Start programs, which I fully support as well.
I mentioned in one of the earlier questions, this is a deeply personal issue for me, and I think it is for everyone that you're going to hear this evening. I lost a nephew to opioids. I lost another one with mental health issues to suicide. And a third one was murdered. So we have experienced the full array of the problems that are confronting this state. And, you know, as we sit in front of groups after group, one of the things I've discovered in this campaign is the concerns are very similar, and every issue requires more funding and a better delivery of services and more heart than we've had for a while. One of the mistakes we made as a state, I think, is electing a governor who hates government. We should not do this again. We tried it. It doesn't work. We do need a governor who will make change happen. Many people have been calling for change in the economy and in government itself for decades, and they are frustrated. And in their frustration, they have elected the one who promised change. This happened at the national level, too, by the way. 8 years ago, people elected, 10 years ago, I hate to say it, Barack Obama. And many of the same people then elected Donald Trump. They didn't turn to the right. They wanted change, and they didn't get it. So I don't mean to make this political because it is deeply personal, but we cannot fund all of the needs we have. It makes no sense for us to go from group to group to group and say, yes, we'll fund this, yes, we'll fund this, yes, we'll fund this. There isn't enough money to do it unless we grow the economy. My 13-year-old last night said to me, you talk too much about the economy. Yes, I do, and that's why. Because we've got to fix these problems, we've got to make lesser problems, and we've got to bring more money into government to do what we all in our hearts want to do, but practically can't do unless we fix the economy.
Thank you.
Gentleman here.
Thank you for coming down to York. Great. So I have a two-part question that are related. I was glad to see one of the students ask about the drain of people from Maine, young people. We lose people, they go to college here and then they leave. Whether it's a doctor or a craft person that might work in the construction industry, varied school teachers, etc. Is there any programs that you can see that would be happening that would potentially either fully fund or partially fund either a 2-year college education or a 4-year college education with the requirement that they stay within the state and work for X amount of years? Certainly that is a funding source that is difficult. And the second part of my question is are you envisioning balanced budgets in Maine, or do you feel that you're going to be increasing taxes? And obviously taxes is another component of why people leave Maine. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I don't envision raising taxes. Thank you for the question. The taxes I hear mostly complained about are the property taxes, because there's been a tax shift in Augusta from the income tax to the property taxes. The lack of revenue sharing, the reductions in revenue sharing, reductions in school funding over many years have resulted in higher property taxes. I'd like to address that by an enhanced circuit breaker program, property tax, which the legislature took some steps towards 2 weeks ago. They put $10 million into a property tax relief fund. I'd like to work on that. But yes, of course we envision balanced budgets. It's required by the Maine Constitution. Unlike the federal government, we have to balance our budgets. And here's what I've done. I served on the Appropriations Committee, the Budget Writing Committee. We didn't raise taxes. We balanced budgets. We balanced and came to consensus budgets, bipartisan budgets, 7 times in 4 years, during some of the toughest years of Maine's economy in recent decades. During the recession of 2008, 2009, we balanced 7 budgets by working across the aisle. Republicans and Democrats, working with our caucuses, and we got it done. So yes, of course, I envision a balanced budget. On your first question about the brain drain and funding education. Now look, if if I were a real politician, I would sit here and I'd probably say, I'm going to promise all students a free year of college, 2 years of college, free. But I think that would be irresponsible because we couldn't fund it. There's no real way to fund that across the board. I'm not going to promise you the moon and then give you a balloon, okay? I will work to enhance the Maine State Grant Program, which does fund scholarships for Maine students. I will work to enhance and simplify Opportunity Maine, which is a loan forgiveness program. I have my own program, if you look online, about income tax forgiveness for those who stay in Maine after graduating from schools here in Maine. I've got a lot of ideas. Look on my website and you'll see my positions on those areas. Thank you.
I think you snuck in two questions there. One was on taxes and one was on how to keep young people here, as I understand it. So we got a minute for each question. I'm going to do my best. Go. 8 years ago, I co-wrote this book. It's called Reinventing Maine Government. And it did something that was long overdue. It compared Maine government to other rural governments across the country. In the 5 states, particularly most like Maine. It was sobering to do that. I didn't do that because of any ideology or predisposition. I don't hate government, I don't love government. I just wanted to know what was happening. It was not good. We spend, as a percentage of our income, among the highest taxes in rural America, in rural states. We cannot increase, that is the pain index, by the way, taxes. It's not the number. It's what's the percentage of your income. It's the pain index. Maine people cannot absorb more taxes. And we can't raise taxes on the rich. That's the easy thing. Hey, I'm going to give you apple pie and ice cream and somebody else will pay for it. We're going to drive ourselves out of being in a competitive position for new entrepreneurs, new businesses. So that's where I'm in taxes. We have to raise revenue for government. I just said, but you have to do it by growing the economy and making government more efficient. 2 things I've worked on for 15 and 20 years. Now, on the school thing, I have proposed, I only have 30 seconds, so I'm going to talk as fast as I can. I have proposed a 2-year free higher education program, but you have to earn it. You have to earn it by living and working in Maine for 10 years. Every year you live and work in Maine, you will have no loan payments, and 10% of your principal will be forgiven. What do we get back? Income tax, sales tax, young people staying, young people coming, roots being put down, new businesses being created. So that's the kind of innovative and creative thinking we need in Maine, and I hope to bring to you as governor.
Thank you for the question. I will start with the second question and come back to your first question. As Maine's first independent state treasurer, I became treasurer at the beginning of 2015. We were working our way out of the recession at that time. I worked collaboratively with Governor LePage and with Democrats and Republicans in the legislature over the last 2 terms to balance our budget, but most importantly, to pay our bills on time with our own money. And that's where we are right now. That's where we are right now. And the number one thing for Maine's next governor is don't screw that up. Okay? Don't screw it up. That means we gotta live within our means. We've been on this trajectory that, our economy has been growing. We grow a little slower than the rest of the country, but we grow. And we've been growing longer than we ever have before without a dip. So there's a dip coming. We don't know when it will start, and we don't know how deep it will be. We need to be prepared. We have money in our savings. We are as prepared as we can be now. But as your next governor, I promise you balanced budgets, and I promise you living within our means. I have no plans to raise taxes. I'd like to find a way to cut a few. The issue that you raised about young people and young people leaving Maine, we have a program right now that I have 3 young adult children. One of them qualifies for it, and it's the Opportunity Maine program. He gets back about $5,000 a year on his Maine taxes, okay? Because he had a STEM degree from the University of Maine. He stayed in Maine and worked. And there are other similar programs that we can entertain as long as we can pay for them. I don't think we have to bribe our kids to stay. I really don't. I think we have to do a better job of appreciating them and mapping out the careers they can have while they're here and give them permission to visit the world, but come home when they're done. That's what I think we should do.
Great. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. My name's Mac McAfee. I consider myself a progressive, and I'm seeing before me three progressives. Three progressives who agree in so many issues that you might have put us to sleep tonight. But no. So that's one point. The second point is that in the last 8 years, we've been confronted with a governor who has been a disgrace to the state. He's been a governor because the progressive vote in the state was twice split by independents. Personally, I was horrified when I heard that there were 2 independents that were running in the gubernatorial race. So my question to the three of you, because it would affect Janet as well, when will you see the light drop out of the race when it's clear you have no chance of winning? And I say it could be addressed to Janet, because maybe Alan catches fire and Janet's in 3rd place. So that's my question. When will you see the light and realize that you don't want to wake up after Election Day and see that we have a LePage lookalike in the Blair House?
I guess everybody heard the question. I think it's the spoiler question. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Look, this state desperately needs new ideas. There have not been new ideas coming out of either political party for 3 decades. I used to write political speeches. I was Bill Clinton's political director in Maine. I ran a lot of campaigns. Those speeches 30 years ago are almost identical to what you're hearing today. We cannot prosper. We cannot move forward if we keep doing the same thing. You all know this. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result. We need new ideas. We cannot have new ideas if the only candidates we have are major party candidates who are selected by a minority within that party, and the parties themselves represent minorities of voters. 42% of the people in Maine are not enrolled in a major political party. They deserve to be heard. Now here's my solution, then I'll answer your question. I believe we should have, I'm a big supporter of ranked choice voting. It does not apply in the fall. I wish it did. That requires a constitutional amendment. And I fear that we will never get the supermajority in the legislature to pass a constitutional amendment. The people of Maine would pass it in a minute. We know what the problem is. But the solution isn't to limit the field to only 2 party candidates. I believe we should have open primaries in June for all candidates, for all voters, and the 2 best candidates should go on to November. No guaranteed position for either party. Put a good candidate out there. Put a winning candidate out there. Now, having said all that, I am the only candidate who has publicly, you can Google this, in March in the Portland Press Herald, said that candidates themselves, in the absence of ranked choice voting, should implement ranked choice voting. And a candidate who cannot win, and we won't know that until later in October, should withdraw. I made that pledge to the people of Maine, and I will carry it out if necessary. But I expect to win. Thank you.
So just a quick history. It's been over 40 years since we've had a gubernatorial election with only 2 candidates. In that time period, we've elected an independent 3 times, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. I'm Terry Hayes. I'm an independent. I expect to be the only nonpartisan option on the ballot on November 6th, and it's my job to earn your vote between now and then. There is nothing that you can say to me that will make me back down, because Mainers won't have a nonpartisan choice if I back out. I had to get twice as many signatures as the party candidates to qualify for the ballot in the same time frame. I've had to be underfunded during the primary season because I didn't have a primary. Those who were running clean got much more money during that period. I'm telling you, if we elect, there are 4 good people running for governor, in my opinion, 4 good people. We elect a partisan, and we are in for it because we're going to be locked into that gridlock. So many of you here, I imagine, as I look across the audience, know what the Dr. Phil question is. Do you know the Dr. Phil question? How's that working for you at this point? So the best way to start is elect a collaborative, experienced, independent individual to be the chief executive, and I want to be that person. Thank you.
Let me just get clear. You're content to be a spoiler in the selection as a progressive.
Well, let me say it this way. If I believed in the spoiler paradigm, we wouldn't even need an election. We could just have a poll. And I don't think any of us would settle for that. I think we all want to vote on November 6th. I was the first person to qualify for the ballot. First person to qualify for the ballot in November. And I'm going to be there all the way to the end because you all deserve a nonpartisan choice. And like I said, if it doesn't count on November 6th, why don't we just have a poll instead of having an election?
Thanks for the question. I think you can see from tonight's questions and answers that we don't really disagree on much. When you talk about new ideas, I respectfully suggest I have a lot of new ideas. You look on my website, I'm not here just to play partisan politics. I'm not here at all to play partisan politics. I'm here to become the next governor of Maine of all the people, the independents, the Republicans, and the Greens, and the Democrats. Of course, we've always generally had an independent running in the gubernatorial race for the last 30-odd years, except for King and Connolly, I think. But honestly, the choice today is between Janet Mills and Sean Moody. And if you want 4 more years of Paul LePage, go ahead and vote for Sean Moody. If you want a new direction, vote for me. If you want to protect your civil rights, your rights to health care, if you want a good education system, a public education system, vote for Janet Mills. But that is the choice realistically. I'm not running just because I'm a woman, just because I'm a Democrat, just because I've done budgets before, just because I'm Attorney General. I'm running because I believe I'm the most qualified person for the job, and I will be the best leader that Maine has seen in a long, long time.
Sir, I'm sorry, I only have time for one more question, and you got it.
Thank you. Am I in the right spot? Can you hear me? You can't hear me yet? Okay. We all know that Maine is a high-tax state. I think it's in the, if you say top 5 and bottom 5, take your choice. We all know that economic development is the engine that runs the country, the state, the city, you name it. Most of the programs that people advocate, all 3 of you, very much worthwhile programs that probably can't be funded in a high-tax state because, as Alan mentioned, you just can't raise taxes willy-nilly. So given those 3 facts, how do you compete with a state like New Hampshire for economic development? And what can you do to make this an economically viable state that is sitting in the corner of the northeast of America with transportation problems, weather problems, if you're talking about North Carolina or Texas? Is there anything that can be done in this state to make it economically competitive and therefore give you the funding you need to bring about some of these programs that everybody agrees with?
Thank you for the question. You know, we need about 2 hours apiece to answer that, not 2 minutes, but let me just start with saying we need renewable energy generation here in Maine. Here in Maine, we need broadband. We're all talking about that. I've got a specific plan for that, especially rural broadband, so people can live and work in Maine and grow the economy here. We need the programs we've all been talking about tonight to bring our youth back and to welcome new Mainers, part of the workforce that we need. It's depressing to me that the Maine Department of Labor projected virtually zero job growth for the next 8 years in the state of Maine. That doesn't help any of us fund any programs. It's also interesting to note that the Maine Chamber of Commerce and the Maine Development Foundation, Educate Maine, they did a survey of 1,000 businesses in Maine. What's your biggest priority, your biggest challenge? Healthcare and the cost of health insurance is preventing them from competing with businesses in other states, New Hampshire too, because those other states have expanded Medicaid. When they expanded Medicaid, they reduced the cost shift onto the insured individuals and the employers and employees. Our people in Maine are seeing higher and higher premiums, those of us who have insurance, the small businesses, the individuals, owner-owned businesses, the people who don't qualify for the ACA, don't qualify for Medicaid now. They will see a reduction in their premiums as a result of Medicaid expansion. That's what the business community is saying now. It's good for business. And I found money to help expand Medicaid. I'm the only one here who's actually balanced the Budget and Appropriations Committee, who's actually found $35 million by negotiating with the 2 largest international tobacco companies to fund Medicaid and to put that towards Medicaid expansion. Now, there are arguments right now in the courthouse about what's in the surplus, the stabilization fund, whether it's $175 million or $101 million. But by God, there is money to do Medicaid expansion, and that's the first step to growing our economy.
I think what we need is to entirely rethink our strategy for economic growth. I'm going to give you 3 things that we've got to stop doing, and they imply what we should start doing. One is stop doing the same thing every other state is doing. We've heard for years we've got to do education better, and we have to do this better and that better. Yeah, that's the price of admission to the modern economy. Everybody has to do certain things. We get that. That's not an economic strategy. That's not a strategy for Maine to move forward ahead of its historic position being one of the lowest income states in the country. So let's not confuse the things you have to do as a price of admission with a strategy. Secondly, for 50 years we've been talking about attracting jobs from other states. This started when the mills began to decline and the farms began to decline. We're going to attract jobs from other states. Like we're going to sneak into another state in the middle of the night and take its best jobs. And we're going to bring them back to Maine and we'll be hunky-dory. Everything will be fine. It's a hit the lottery strategy that makes no sense and it has not delivered for us. Here's another thing we've got to stop doing. Stop giving tax breaks to companies that don't produce jobs. Every time we hear about making a tax break for businesses, which I support, we say, oh, we're doing that to create jobs. But we don't demand that the jobs are created. If you and I owned a company and we sold a product, we wouldn't just give it to someone and say, well, I hope someday when you're feeling really good and things go well, I hope maybe you'll consider like giving us some money. No. We're going to give tax breaks. We want jobs in return. Very simple. You want to run government like a business? Stop there. Don't give stuff away in the hope that you get the behavior you want. You want tax breaks, create jobs, and sustain good jobs, and you get them. You'll get the support of many people. Otherwise, your promises don't mean a lot to us.
This is the audience participation part. I have a question for you. If you would please raise your hand if you were not born here. Whoa. Okay, you can put your hands down now. Absolutely. Why did you come? Why are you here? That was well over half. That was the vast majority of the people in the room. Something brought you here. Now, it might be your parents, okay? I understand you might not have had a choice, but you're here now. And you're interested enough in what's going on to be in this room tonight and to listen to us field your questions. We have things in Maine that other people want, like a natural environment, a coastline that you can't find that there's any place else. We have clean air. We have clean water. We have more fresh water than, you fly over the state of Maine and there's water everywhere, okay? We don't have traffic the way you have traffic in other places. We have what other people want. Not everybody, because we don't want them all to come, but we would like some of them to come, right? So you all came. We have to remember what's special about this place, and we have to lead with those assets, because we fill those thousands of jobs that are open, and we can afford to do the things that you spoke about, because that will grow. We're going to be trying, main focus is trying to create 20,000 traded jobs in the next 10 years, all right? And then fill them. We've got assets that are worth parading around and soliciting people to come here, and by golly, I'm going to be at the head of that line, and before you leave, I want you to write down for me what it was that brought you here, so I can use that if there's anything I didn't list. We can do this, especially if we lead with what we love. Thank you.
So that's it for this evening. I want to thank the candidates. Can we give them a round of applause? This night because I felt as if people in this part of the state were forgotten by most of the candidates. You know, Maine somehow stops at Biddeford. Portland maybe, Biddeford maybe. That's it. So I wanted to have an opportunity. And I want to thank the students and the audience for giving us